Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we're talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. God, Andy, this movie's made so much money this weekend.
It's been massive.
Everybody is going to see this movie. We have to talk about its incredible opening. We're going to talk about it, of course. We went and saw it. We're not doing any spoilers. We don't do that on this show. We're also going to talk about Triangle of Sadness, a Swedish comedy. I don't know where director Ruben Ostlund hails from, but it's on Hulu. It came out last year, and it's surprisingly biting, I think, though it does have some things.
Palme d'Or winner.
Palme d'Or winner. Much better introduction than I could ever make. Yes. We're going to talk about Disney. Elemental comes out in a couple weeks, and critics are not, it's not looking good. And I want to talk about that. In regards to Pixar, I got a little history with Disney. Fans of the show will know. We'll talk about it. Before we get to all that, though, we talk about the news. Our first story this week, new Fast and Furious movie starring Dwayne Johnson in development at Universal. Boo.
Boo.
No, listen. We like Dwayne Johnson just fine, okay? But, we admittedly are not big fans of the Fast franchise. At least we saw Fast 9. We saw Fast X. It's fine. But I gotta start wrapping these things up, Andy. What is this about Dwayne Johnson getting his own movie?
Well, Dwayne Johnson has, in the last couple of years, kind of fumbled his Hollywood bag, and he put all his chips into Black Adam, and he thought he was going to be head of DC or be a big mover and shaker over there. Black Adam comes out and is totally mediocre, does bad business, and he doesn't really have the kind of money making power he did just not 5 years ago. So he's come crawling back to the Fast and Furious franchise, which he had said he'd never work with Vin Diesel again. He's coming back. He's going to have a solo movie that's it's not a sequel to Hobbs and Shaw, which was a spinoff they did. It's going to actually be a bridge between Fast X and Fast X Part 2, which means we're getting another 2-3 years of these movies. I was hoping they were going to wrap it up next year, but The Rock coming back for more Fast and Furious action.
Vin Diesel's been talking about there being more Fast and Furious movies on the Fast X red carpet. He infamously said they may do another 3. He's talked about getting an all gals edition together. He wants to do spin-offs with Ludacris and Jason Statham, and that's all well and good. And Dwayne Johnson will definitely bring some he'll sell some tickets. All right, he'll put some butts in seats. But, my God, he had a horrifically public falling out with Vin Diesel in the franchise. There are Instagram posts. There's stories from the sets. When you watch the movie, the two guys, never really size each other out. It's weird, how the two of them got along publicly. And this all kind of culminated when the film came out, and he said, I'm not doing any more of them. It was a really weird falling out. Then right before Fast X came out, Vin Diesel made a plea to have Dwayne Johnson return to the franchise. He said, brother, you got to come back. On Instagram, it was a whole thing. And The Rock didn't respond, which is in perfect form for The Rock. But now that means one of two things. Either A, that was a whole manufactured bit, which gross, or B, he totally went for it and was these people reach out and was yeah, I need a paycheck. And now he's come crawling back to Universal in the Fast and Furious franchise because Black Adam didn't work out. It's a sad story, Andy. Tremendous bag fumble. Huge fumbling of the bag, right? In front of God and cinema and everybody, right? What do you think?
It's truly amusing and funny, and also strange that, again, the Fast and Furious franchise just has so much long-standing power. And maybe this is what Vin Diesel meant when he said there was going to be a 3-part finale. Is the Hobbs movie was going to be in between the two Fast movies to finish this thing off. Before, again, all the spin-offs, like Vin Diesel, there's all these interviews of him on the red carpet, totally sloshed, slurred his words, talking about we just got to get through this so we can get to the spinoffs. We really don't, but it's funny to see someone of Dwayne Johnson's stature be humbled and have to come back and be a team player.
I just want to say before I move on from this, I hate that this is between the Fast X and the next Fast movie. Not only because it extends that stupid timeline, but because then Dwayne Johnson gets to get out on the world stage and act all big man when it does great numbers and be look at me putting out a movie that rocks. And it's literally riding the high of a franchise you had since bailed on. Like that's super lame. That'd be like if Gwyneth Paltrow was bragging about Avengers Endgame numbers because she's in it for 10 minutes. And like, I know he's going to be in his own movie and I'm sure he's going to do his own stunts and everything. But like, dude, I can't anymore with these big ass personalities, like talking mad game and acting like there's something so much bigger than like just an easy formulaic return. Anyway, like I shouldn't rag on the Fast franchise. They're fine. We saw them. Our Fast X reviews just a few weeks ago. If you wanted to check that out, please do. Anything else on this one before I jump into Oppenheimer, Andy?
No, I'm ready to keep going.
Oppenheimer gets an R rating. I don't believe it. This had been a rumor on the internet for a minute that Oppenheimer, the 3-hour Christopher Nolan half black and white biopic about J. Robert Oppenheimer, the inventor of the atomic bomb, may be rated R. And we said there's no way Universal would greenlight a 3-hour atomic bomb biopic that's in half black and white, whatever, that also is strictly limited to like audiences that you know want to see some hardcore content. I mean, hardcore is what it does on movies nowadays. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Andy, what do you think about this?
Really surprising. So PG-13 is the kind of Goldilocks rating that all the studios want because everyone can see it. You can take the kids way under 13 will generally think of parents who take their kids to see all the superhero stuff, all the way through adults. PG-13 is what you want for a big blockbuster film. It's what is going to net you the most money. And now you have Oppenheimer coming out again, same day as Barbie, going up against Barbie with an R rating. And I thought maybe this was going to, show some really violent images about like the horrors of atomic warfare. Apparently it's like sex and nudity, so there's like some sex scenes that are going to make Oppenheimer crawl into the R rating, which is just baffling to me. It's like Nolan is trying to sabotage his own movie.
It's I think this is a reflection of like just how bad Universal wanted Nolan after he left Warner Brothers following Tenet's release. Nolan did not like that Warner Brothers announced like day and date during COVID for HBO. They said all of our theatrical features in 2020 are going to be pushing straight to HBO same day. And he was not a fan of that. He spoke very publicly about it. He did interviews. This sucks. This is hurting cinema. He's all about seeing things on the big screen. Then Tenet, of course, is in limbo following COVID, and he wants it to come out, and they're like, we're not sure. And he really convinces them it's got to happen. This is the time. And it comes out and goes nowhere. Or went, not really as big as it should have. Following that, he jumped to Universal, who were very excited to get him away from Warner Brothers. And now it seems they have greenlit, like what all signs point to is far too high concept for major audiences.
A big summer release, yeah.
It reminds me of like The Northman and people being like, that movie's going to be huge nationally. And it's like, it's too, no, like, I don't think people go for this. They go for Dwayne Johnson's Fast and Furious 11. Like those are going to be the things people are turning out for. Like Oppenheimer may not be it, which is particularly funny given this other little rumor we've been hearing on corners of the internet. That is a rumor, I should say. We don't have any evidence of this being true, but reportedly Tom Cruise is mighty pissed at Christopher Nolan because Mission Impossible 7, Dead Reckoning Part 1, comes out like 2 weeks before Oppenheimer? And Oppenheimer and Universal have locked down every IMAX screen in the country for a 3-week exclusive run of Oppenheimer, which means Tom Cruise's big budget blockbuster gets 14 days in IMAX theaters before it's unavailable. That's it. That's the whole run. It'll never be out there again. Like crazy.
It's a tale of two IMAX films. IMAX screens are much fewer. There's only usually like one or two in every major city. They're a big part of the box office now. They charge so much more for IMAX, and it's popular. It's a big money maker, and so everyone wants their film. And usually a movie will only be in IMAX like a week or two. It is not much. I remember I missed, I think it was Eternals and Dune. I missed Dune in IMAX because Eternals was there 2 weeks later. So IMAX is a huge deal, and there's only so many theaters. So it's funny to watch these big personalities, Tom Cruise and Christopher Nolan, duke out about who gets the screen.
Yeah. One thing's for sure, Oppenheimer is definitely going to be big on IMAX. This IMAX print of Oppenheimer is running in two versions, 35 millimeter and 70 millimeter, alongside digital, of course. The 70 millimeter IMAX is the version Christopher Nolan says you've got to see it in. It is the number one recommended way, is the biggest possible way to see it, and there are only 25 screens in the United States running this print because there are only 25 real 70 millimeter IMAX projectors in the United States. It's nuts. There's a list online. The 70 millimeter IMAX prints are reportedly 600 pounds and 11 miles long, laid end to end. 11 miles of movie, which is bananas. Not only because of the bigger frame of the 70 millimeter IMAX, but also just the length of the film at 3 hours. And I can tell you confidently here on this show that your boys at Off Script, Andy and I, somehow, like by grace of God, have tickets to the 70 millimeter IMAX show.
We got tickets 2 months in advance.
Dude, 60 days in advance. The day tickets went on sale, we managed to grab a seat. One of these theaters is shockingly close to us. So right here on Off Script, come July, we're covering Oppenheimer. We're covering it the biggest way possible. It's going to be insane. You've got to come back for the review. Great opportunity to say, subscribe to the show to get the review straight to your phone when it comes out. Andy, are you stoked to see Oppenheimer? A little more so maybe than, like, I don't know, what the R rating might incur?
I mean, I'm excited the same way I'm excited for Killers of the Flower Moon. Like I'm excited for the art house stuff that usually comes out in the fall. I just hate that it's probably not going to do very well. I think it's going to get crushed by Barbie. I really, really do. Again, the R rating hurts that people aren't going to take their kids to a 3-hour meditative biopic about, the arms race of the 1940s. It's just a dry topic, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah, I don't know where exactly Oppenheimer is headed. I think it's very funny that Tom Cruise is mad that a summer blockbuster is coming out even near his summer blockbuster. Like, that's hilarious. From the man who's the man who couldn't go to the Academy Awards, Jesus, comes like, I'm mad that a blockbuster's coming out 2 weeks after my blockbuster. It's amazing. The thinnest of hands, like paper hands, Cruise. And also, I do want to say Oppenheimer is definitely going to get beat by Barbie, in my humble opinion. We'll see, though. With that, we need to move into our last story before we talk about Spider-Man. Speaking of Spider-Man, this movie made so much money. Dude, this movie made so much money. Like, I know we cover movies that make money on this show, but like this is a stone cold stunner. And you want to give them the numbers?
So let me start off with what this was projected to make. Across the Spider-Verse was projected to make between $50 and $60 million over the weekend. It came in at double at $120 million, over $200 million internationally. I believe, $208 million. Huge hit, blowing away expectations. Usually, if you do like $10 million, like that's more than, if you do $10 million more than what you're projected, usually that's a huge win. So if you're projected to make 50, you come in at 60. That's a huge movie, and it came in at double that. Massive. It's already made as much money as the first movie, and it's only going to be more huge. It's going to have legs. I think it's going to be one of the big movies of the summer.
So Andy and I try to keep just a finger on the box office every week on the show, just kind of see what's going on. And I think we expected, like everybody else, that this movie was going to do well. I couldn't believe how many people were sitting in seats in my theater like Monday night, because I saw this late. I saw this just last night. Andy saw it Friday, you saw it Thursday, I think, right? Like you jumped on
Friday.
it.
No, I saw it Friday, but it was packed.
Yeah, it was packed. And then come Monday, like also packed. And I saw it in a smaller town than Andy did. And those are the kind of movies that really jump out at us. Like, we watch a lot of movies on this show. Anytime like we're sitting in a theater that is just wall to wall, it's like, man, people are really nuts about this. Like, and it shows. This movie made $50 million in the United States alone on an opening day. One day, $50 million. Over $200 million in one weekend globally. It only cost $100 million to make. So in 3 days, in 72 hours of publication, you made double your money. Like, that is one of the greatest investments in United States history. I can't believe how well this movie's done. I didn't even expect it to do this well. Like, I know the first movie was a banger, but like a lot of that was word of mouth. I think people were a little skeptical when it came out. Like, oh, okay, yeah, it's a cool animated Spider-Man feature, but like, what's it about? But like, it has so grown past that since then, and people are voracious for this stuff. I can't believe Sony is the one holding the tiger by the tail here. Like, Sony Studios, creators of the Emoji Movie, like made
And
this.
Morbius.
Dude, yeah, like Venom 2 made this, like insanity. But in partnership with Marvel, like they managed to pull off something really, really incredible. Good God. And what a film it is.
Yeah, and I also wanted to point out that The Little Mermaid came in at number 2, not surprising, but Guardians slid into the number 3 spot up past Fast X, which is going to be on digital this Friday. So like 2, maybe 3 weeks since it came out, the Fast and Furious movie is already going to be available to rent because it is not doing particularly well domestically. It is doing great numbers abroad, but I just thought that was pretty funny.
I am so impressed with this movie. Well, we need to talk about it. Now's the time to talk about it. We spent too much time on news anyway. Let's talk about it. I'm going to be taking the summary on this, so please excuse my clumsy delivery. The movie is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Sorry, the movie is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Admittedly,
Careful.
a strange name scheme that's a little hard to remember for old people like me. But Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is the sequel to 2018 Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. In that film, we met Miles Morales, mild-mannered student in Brooklyn who gets bit by a radioactive spider and becomes Spider-Man in a way that people don't expect, right? Because he doesn't have the traditional Peter Parker story. And in that movie, he opens up a bit of a small crack into the Spider-Verse, multiverse, what have you, where a bunch of villains come out. He fights him alongside Peter B. Parker and Gwen Stacy from other universes, and then they take off, and that's the movie. Well, Across the Spider-Verse comes out 4 years later, but only 1 year and 4 months later in the film. Miles is a little older, a little taller, a little bit more rugged, and he's been Spider-Man in this whole time. And his parents have no idea, right? He couldn't possibly tell them. Classic Spider-Man conundrum, right? Like, I'm saving the world, but also have to be a student. And it's starting to show that something is wrong with Miles. Well, right around when they're starting to get into it, a multiverse opens up again. Through a strange series of events, Miles is reunited with some of his friends and some newcomers to face a surprisingly challenging foe in what is proven to be one of the most exciting films of the year and one of the most exciting animated features of the year. The movie is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Andy, what'd you think?
So I wanted to talk about, I was a little skeptical going in, partially because of the runtime. It's a lot longer than the first movie. It's 2 hours, 20 minutes. So I was a little skeptical of that. I had also heard some kind of hyperbolic comparisons. Like one of the things I heard before going in that it was like the Dark Knight of Spider-Man movies. And I was like, whoa. Let's calm our horses. And I was completely blown away. My eyes were glued to the screen. It's a little slow in kind of the first act, but once it gets going, like I couldn't get up. I had to go to the bathroom so bad, and I was just like, there's nowhere to get up because there's so much excitement happening, and it's just like the action, the art style, the music, the drama. Like they nailed so much, and it's the first one is a masterpiece, I think, and it would be hard to live up to that, and I think they've managed to do that. And like all great sequels, they've gone beyond. They've made it bigger. Both in terms of like scale, but also story, which is a really hard thing to do. So really enjoyed it. Let's get into why.
Yeah, I was really impressed with this movie. Like I told Andy I might have been a little overhyped, and even I walked away thinking like this is one of the coolest features of the year. Sony has managed to tap into something really special. Like with these movies, you have a really great character, right, in a familiar world, or great characters, I should say, really, especially after this film, like in a very familiar setting, right? Spider-Man, New York, comics, superheroes, right? A timely topic, hero movies in 2023, and a brilliant brilliant visual animated style, like that has not only like changed like how many studios are approaching these movies, but has grown on audiences who are clearly hungry for more. I really want to talk about the visuals of this movie. We can't talk about any of that before we're getting to the plot, and I want to keep it light. We're talking about the plot because I think the less you know, the better. For what is this? A 2 hour 20-minute feature. It's one of the longest. I think it's the longest big budget animated Hollywood theatrical release for an animated film ever. 2 hours 20 minutes is like insane runtime for an animated feature. And at that time, I thought, man, this feels like it's going to be too big and too complicated. Andy, did you feel that way? Did you feel like there was too much going on in Across the Spider-Verse, or were you hungry for more?
Well, yes and no. There are longer sequences than I had expected. Spider-Gwen, voiced by Haley Steinfeld, gets a lot of screen time and she gets a lot of story. She actually kind of opens the film. There's a very long kind of action and emotional sequence with just her, and it to the point where I was like, is this going to be like Spider-Gwen's movie? Like it's like surprise, it's about her. And that's not what happens, but it's a pretty long intro. It's like 15, maybe 20 minutes, and then the credits, or then the opening titles hit. So there's just a lot of story, but I don't think that's a bad thing. They're really trying to give both Miles and Gwen Stacy some really just complex character arcs. And there are some pretty long action sequences, but man, when it gets going, like there's this huge chase in the middle, kind of the midpoint of the film that you can see part of in the trailers. I mean, man, once it gets going, you're just with it. It reminded me of that old hucksterism of like pay for the whole seat, but you'll only need the edge.
You'll only need the edge. Yeah, big time. I definitely think like jumping into the multiverse stuff is complicated, like in superhero movies nowadays, and a lot are want to do it. I mean, in 2 weeks we got The Flash, which is doing multiverse stuff. Most of Marvel's features are doing multiverse kind of stuff. The idea of like, you know, new worlds and new universes where things are a little different can get messy. And I can comfortably say like Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse manages to thread the needle perfect. It is not too complicated. It does get a little big concept, but then it like shrinks right back down to like a comfortable place in plot right when it starts to feel too much, like by applying pressure on our characters, right? Like any good hero's journey is wont to do. Miles is much more like eyes wide open in this movie. He's getting to see a lot more and go to a lot of new places. And Gwen is not only along for the ride, but is like comfortably like second protagonist material, I think, in this feature, with a really great story. Like I actually really liked her content a lot. Combined with like a lot of good action sequences makes for a surprisingly good 2 hour 20-minute romp. Settings are a lot of fun too. Like not only are we in Brooklyn, but we're in alternate New York cities, we're on alternate Earths, alternate universes, spaces between universes, and all of that makes for like great places to not only have like visual distinction and exciting like cultural inclusion of like different aspects of humanity, which is really nice, but also have fantastic action sequences, really great work that are really busy but visually satisfying in a way like few animated films are able to pull off. I think the action is so stellar in this.
Yeah, like we said we get a big action sequence at the beginning with primarily Spider-Gwen, which is really great, and there's a massive chase sequence in the middle of the film where in the trailer you see basically all the Spider-Men from all the universes trying to capture and chase Miles, and it's an incredible sequence, and it just like it's full of jokes, it's full of actions, it's full of humor, and it also serves the story. It's not just there to be there, and then we also have a couple of big climaxes. There is a kind of a subplot of a character called the Spot that we meet very early on, who's like the character that can produce holes and can kind of reach, like, he puts up a hole and he can step into a house, or he tries to rob an ATM at one point, and he's trying to be Miles's kind of nemesis, but he's kind of a joke, but he's someone that's slowly getting more and more powerful as the film goes on. And it's an interesting kind of subplot that we see kind of just simmer in the background.
It's funny because this movie was produced by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who were responsible for the previous film and also notably like the Lego movie recent, which wasn't that long ago. I guess it was now, but all really funny comedies that like families seem to really enjoy. And notably in another film they produced, the Lego Batman movie, Zach Galifianakis' Joker in that feature has the same gag as the Spot in this movie. Not that it doesn't work, it's funny twice. That he wants to be the superhero's nemesis, and the superhero's like, "You're not my nemesis. You're not that important to me at all." And they're like kind of heartbroken about it. So they're like,
It's
"Well,
like
I'm gonna rally and do the real bad thing now, just to show you how bad I really am." Like, and I love it. Like, it makes Spot like a surprisingly fun character, voiced by Jason Schwartzman, who doesn't actually get that much time in the feature, but ends up being like a really bright Spot. Pun intended there. Yeah. I meant for that one. That was intentional.
It's a good time to get into our cast. We have the return of course, Shamik Moore as Miles Morales and Haley Steinfeld as Gwen Stacy, but we have a number of newcomers that are a lot of fun. We have the great Daniel Kaluuya as Spider-Punk, who's very much in the punk like kind of stereotype, who's like British, anti-establishment, like very for like kind of from the 80s. Great characters, like you said, Jason Schwartzman as well. Issa Rae is in this as a Spider Person as well, Spider Woman, and okay, what is it? Oscar Isaac, of course, as the new hero, Miguel O'Hara, who seems to be kind of controlling or be in charge of the great multiverse and a lot of kind of overarching decision. So a lot of new voices to just fill out the cast, and it's a lot of fun.
I think this movie does a really good job of leaning on some of its older cast effectively. Like Gwen Stacy gets a ton of time in the front. Meanwhile, like some of the others, like Peter B. Parker or like the anime one, Penny Parker, from Spider-Man, like the previous Spider-Man movie, like they get a little bit of time. Peter B. Parker gets kind of shafted in this movie. he's pushed way to the background, but like I think that's fine. It doesn't hurt the plot. If anything, it gives us more time with Gwen Stacy. But more importantly, like we get this wonderful new cast of Spider people who are all fun in their own ways. Like even like Andy Samberg's I should say obnoxious like Scarlet Spider, or Issa Rae's like surprisingly charming like Spider Woman. Of course, Dana Kaluuya as Hobie Brown needs to be mentioned. He's so cool, dude. I saw one of the animators on Twitter that was like, we all knew you were going to like this character. It's fine. Everybody can like him. He's the most likable character in the movie. He's great. Like a lot of fun. Even like Oscar Isaac's Miguel O'Hara is like really cool and unique. Like the creativity that comes from like the multiple spider people is just as exciting, I think, as the visuals in the film.
Right, which is a perfect stepping point into that. We get the first film was groundbreaking in its visuals because it looked like a living comic book. It had those kind of spots and lines, and it had words pop up where you kind of needed them, and it had a lot of like let's do this again, and they would flip through the pages of the comic. So we get a lot of that, but it has somehow raised the stakes or just raised the bar in the art style, in that every universe just kind of looks drastically different. And this is something like Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness completely failed to do. Everyone in that movie looked the same except had a different haircut. But for instance, in Gwen Stacy's world, everything is like watercolor. Like the background is it, and you can visually see like the paint kind of dripping down the back of the screen whenever we're in her world, and we see the background also changing color as like her mood changes and as the drama on the screen it kind of unfolds. And then that's vastly different from Spider-Man India's world, completely different art style, but then also things like Spider-Punk Hobie Brown has completely different, like just his character is animated completely different at a different frame rate from everyone else. And so like they've just raised the bar of the art style and the animation in a way I was not expecting it at all.
Yeah, like a stunning commitment to visual clarity here. And also like fortunately it's not too much. There are nice segments in the film where things slow down. Like every movie can't just be action all the time. And that actually helps ground it a lot, I think, for like your big action sequences, cuz some of these sequences are like 20 minutes long. Like they are hardy and they are busy and they're so much fun. And like you can't even keep up with what's going on, which I think makes rewatchability like excellent. Like just to go back and kind of just get another pass at like what this thing that flew by you the first time through. Combining styles, I think, is really clever, especially when they clash. Early, one of the villains from a different universe shows up in Gwen Stacy's, and they look so different that your eye is just immediately drawn to them on the screen. Like you're just staring at them, trying to like get a look at like what this guy is, because he so stands out from like the world that he's in, and that's a really clever way to take on, I think, like this combining of universes. Yeah, Spider-Man India's got the exact same thing. Like it's so cool looking and thoughtful, and the music is neat, soundtrack's great. I feel like I'm running out of things to say without talking in circles here, Andy. What do you think?
Well, I wanted to talk about the music. Fantastic score again by Daniel Pemberton, who scored the first film. And I really like the score in the first one. It has really memorable themes. But I think what I liked a lot that he does in this and that he did in the first film is that different characters have completely different soundscapes. It's not like we call it in music we call this like the leitmotif, and you can think of that as like the Force theme or like Darth Vader's march. These really well known things, but those are all kind of orchestral scoring. In this, different characters will just have completely different sounds. Like Prowler, for instance, he has this like this hard like synth thing going on, and this Spot does too. And if you listen closely, like Gwen Stacy is like a rock and roll, like because she plays in a rock band, and so she just has completely different sound. And if you listen closely, all the characters are a little bit different, sometimes a lot different from each other, and so that complements like the visual differences that we're seeing on screen.
Yeah, like I did want to ask one more thing before I move off this. This is a part 1 of 2. Like I don't think anybody's surprised by that. Like it doesn't exactly advertise it in the ad or on the poster or anything, but like if you Google it's on there. It's not a big deal. And it is also a sequel, right? I think one of the worst, potentially the only crime this movie might commit is I think it might have set the bar too high. Like how does 3 go taller than this? You know what I mean? Like the hype is going to be so off the charts. People are going to be so overexcited. it's a real big bar, man.
When it ended, I can't remember the last time I saw a movie and I was so excited when it ended. Like I was so high. I was ready for another hour, and then it says like to be continued, and I was like, oh my God, no, I need more and right now. Pump it into my veins. Like it had me so excited. And people, I've heard comparisons to like Empire Strikes Back, that kind of cliffhanger of, oh no, what do we do now? Where is this gonna go? I think it does have a high bar. I think it can reach it, but man, I can't remember being like I said, that excited at the end of a film. And I was telling Zach before the show, I've been like looking on YouTube for like the grainiest cell phone footage of people like recording the end of the movie, just to go back and watch like some of the clips that I really loved. Yeah, it's gonna be huge, I think.
Yeah. I was gonna say, when I saw it just yesterday, I saw it in a smaller part of town, and it was still like wall to wall packed. We saw it on the biggest screen we could, and when the movie ended, like a bunch of people gasped. One guy went like 3 seats back. He goes, "Hell yeah!" And then everybody starts clapping. It was a great time with an audience. Like, and no kid was talking in that theater. Everybody was glued to the screen. Like, it's just such a dude. Like, Across the Spider-Verse is so worth your time. Andy, you ready for recommendations?
Yes, but real quick, I wanted to say about the end. A lot of times, a cliffhanger ending is can go both ways. It can be like, it can just end in eye rolling and sighs and not be exciting at all. I'm thinking of like the end of The Matrix Reloaded, when there's this like bam bam bam, and you're like, oh, it's not really that exciting. And this was the exact opposite of it. I was so hype, even when it ended.
Yeah. Andy, would you recommend Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Ringing endorsement.
Run, don't walk to the theater. I was gonna see, like, I could have watched it again the next day or the day after that. I definitely want to see it again in theater because it was just such a great cinematic moment. Great performances. I mean, just raise the bar, like, Terminator 2 style. Like, it's bigger, it's bolder, both in terms of visuals, but also the story and the action. And it really blew me away for a movie I was already, pretty kind of excited about.
Yeah, I am in the same boat. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is an absurd amount of fun. Like, please go see this movie. See it on the biggest screen, loudest screen you can. Take as many friends as you can. It reminds me a little of like the buzz I felt after watching like Top Gun, where you're just like, it was so much fun to enjoy going to the theater to watch and made the whole experience so good. Like it feels like everyone's talking about it. Like, it's so cool, man. Like, you should absolutely go see this movie. Please go see it before it's out of theaters. Rush, run to the theater. That's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Andy, I can't believe they stuck the landing. Like, and so much more so than simply just like making an acceptable sequel.
It's
crazy.
It's rare. It's what's really rare is when you're hyped for a movie and not only does it meet, but it exceeds. Like, I can count on one hand the number of movies that I've been incredibly excited about that actually delivered and far beyond my expectations.
Yeah, it's bananas. Like, I think the world of this studio, I can't wait to see what they do next. I hope they make 5 more of these movies and not just one. With that, we should move into our next segment. Andy, you want to intro this?
It's time for the death of cinema. So we're going to be talking about Disney. Sorry.
Disney, yes.
Disney and Pixar. They're in trouble. Somewhat. I have a longstanding theory that Disney's trying to shuttle the entire Pixar studio, that they're kind of being sabotaged. But that's not what we're going to get into just now. Zach, what's all this about?
So Disney just last weekend cut off 75 Pixar executives' heads. They rolled them down Wall Street and told all the stockholders, look, we're changing. Things are going in a different direction, because it seems like everybody is aware that Elemental, Pixar's $200 million animated feature that's coming out in 2 weeks right next to The Flash, is going to underperform. Like, everybody is convinced this movie is not going to pop. We've all seen the trailer. We've seen it 10 times, and it just looks fine. It just looks fine, right? And fine doesn't work when your movie costs $200 million, and fine doesn't work when it comes from the House of Mouse, and fine doesn't work when it comes out in the summer, and it definitely doesn't work when it comes out after Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Don't know if you guys have heard about this movie, but it's a banger. Like, and it's huge, and it's big, and it's bold, and it's visually distinct, and people think the world of it. And while Elemental isn't necessarily going for the same audience, I'd say firmly it's aimed at families. You could also look at something like the Super Mario Brothers movie from Illumination that is like one of the highest grossing films this year, cleared a Billy as predicted by your boys here at Off Script, and is continuing to do great. Like, neither of these are Disney productions. Disney, of course, the House of Mouse, built by the very hands of Walt Disney on the page of his animation studio. Animation is what built this company, and now suddenly it doesn't seem to be working. I do want to talk about quickly who they laid off here. There's a couple of names that are worth knowing, but before I jump into that and then kind of my larger impressions of where Disney's headed with Pixar, because I got hot takes on this. Andy, what do you think about Elemental? Are you at all stoked for this movie? I mean, is this a trend for Pixar? What was the last Pixar movie you saw that you liked?
Probably Turning Red. Turning Red was pretty good, but I feel like Disney's been sabotaging Pixar for the last few years. 3 of their last 4 releases have been straight to Disney Plus, and they more or less trained audiences to stay home when it comes to Pixar and animation. Lightyear grossly underperformed, and it was a miss among critics, and now I feel like Elemental is being set up to fail, because Elemental looks fine, but this should have come out sometime in the spring. It would have been a big spring hit, easily took the weekend. It's going to get creamed against The Flash and also competing against Transformers and Spider-Verse. There's just no way. So I feel like Disney is setting this movie up to fail, and then they can just cut more jobs at Pixar, possibly shuttle them entirely, because they just haven't. Pixar's not really what it was. They used to help define animation and storytelling, and now their movies just remind me of other Pixar movies I've already seen.
I agree. I think Disney's setting this movie up to fail. I don't think they obviously intended for it to, but at some point they realized this isn't going to work, and now it's just kind of going to go out and it's just going to go out and die. That's what's going to happen to Elemental. It's kind of the same thing they did to Strange World, which we saw for this show. I don't know if Andy saw it. I saw it. Which I actually liked. I thought Strange World was good, but it was stunningly progressive to a point where just recently a teacher in Florida was catching flack for showing it to her students, which is wild news. But they also did this to, God, what was that movie? Treasure Planet. They killed Treasure Planet before it came out. They were like, it's too weird. We don't think it's going to work. Like when you get to the point where you're big enough and you can swing your checkbook around at any problem, like sometimes it's not worth promoting a feature if it's going to make you look worse. It's worth mentioning the last time Pixar cut jobs was in 2013, just before the release of The Good Dinosaur, which is widely hailed as one of Pixar's weakest. They postponed that film and laid off 30 people, including that director. Now, just before Elemental, 75 people get cut. And it's worth mentioning those 30 were also execs. They were also high up in the creative lines. About 1,200 employees at Pixar. These 75 from this Elemental firing include Lightyear director Angus MacLane, who's a 26-year animator at the studio, who worked on films like Toy Story 4 and Coco, and Galen Sussman, producer of Lightyear. She's been with the studio since Toy Story in 1995. Galen Sussman, great bit of film trivia here. She's the woman that saved Toy Story 2. If you never heard that story, basically Pixar almost accidentally deleted all of Toy Story 2 right at the end of its render, which back then took like 3 months to render a movie that size. This woman had the only backup on her computer. Save the film, save the studio. She has been let go. I do think it's time for a change creatively. So I can't say that these are good or bad cuts, but I do think something's got to change at Disney. Are you with me so far, Andy?
I'm here.
So go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. It's a rough time for Pixar and animation. The pandemic didn't help. But again, Disney used to be they were defining the medium. They were responsible for essentially the animation renaissance of the early 90s and through the 2000s. And it used to be whatever Disney was doing, everyone else was trying to emulate in some forks. So, DreamWorks is kind of one of their direct competitors. But now, I mean, it's embarrassing seeing it Across the Spider-Verse, and then just a week before, we had to sit through an uninspired remake of The Little Mermaid, and it's like, where's the inspiration? Where's the imagination? The Imagineers that we heard so much about. Like Disney used to call the shots in this space, and now they're falling way behind.
Yeah, and it's not just in their animation department, right, at Pixar. It's everywhere. Like their live action films are running out of runway. Like they're pivoting to Moana. They're going to start doing their like more recent animated features because they're running out of movies to adapt. So regardless of what you think of the creative strategy behind those features, they don't have many more to do. Marvel is flattening and people are becoming less and less interested. Those ticket sales are continuing to do fine to decline. Star Wars can't get back in a theater, and their animated sector is not going anywhere, whether that be Disney animated features like Strange World or what Pixar is doing. What is happening to the House of Mouse? Like, why aren't they putting out good features anymore? It seemed like at least during the pandemic, you could pin this on Bob Chapek. New CEO, new direction. But now Bob Iger's back in the seat, and it's becoming really obvious, like, these are, like, decade-old strategies here. Like, these are things that were working 5 or 10 years ago that don't work anymore, right? It seems like it might be time for a change, which is why I think maybe moving some people around at Pixar is a good idea, because I don't know where the studio's headed from here other than back into sequelitis. That's what I think. And there's a bit of a schedule with Pixar movies that I'm happy to discuss quickly to explain that. But Andy, you would agree, right? Like Pixar's not in a good spot.
No. Most of their last few films have been again. So we have Lightyear underperformed. We had Soul. Soul was great, but it came straight to Disney Plus on Christmas Day, so it just not a whole lot of people saw it. It didn't become kind of the cultural phenomenon that a lot of these movies tend to be. Because that's the other thing is like a lot of these big studios like Disney doesn't just their product isn't film, their product is culture. And when you start making mediocrity, you're not having the cultural impact that you have for decades. But then kind of before that, they had Turning Red, which was great, but that ended up going straight to Disney Plus when it was supposed to have a theatrical release. And that's probably the best of the last kind of 4 films they've made. Before that, it was Luca, which went straight to Disney Plus, and then Onward. Onward, which was a theatrical release, but it was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was still kind of a smaller Pixar film.
I want to talk about this cycle of Pixar real fast because I think we can see where they're headed. When Pixar started, it was independent of Disney. Their first few features from 95 to like, I don't know, 2004, 2005 were all like childlike imaginative ideas. What if your toys came to life? What if the monsters in your closet were real? What if bugs could talk, right? Like, what if cars could talk? What if fish could talk? Like, very simple, like, basic ideas that were really imaginative and fun. But then they get acquired by Disney in 2006, and this is where Pixar enters sequel era, right? Toy Story 2, Cars 3, Cars 2, what was I saying? Finding Dory, right? Monsters University, Incredibles 2, Toy Story 4. Like, they're working on that from 2006 to like 2019. And they do alternate years in there. Like, they'll do, you know, Monsters University and then Brave. Or they did Cars 3 and then Coco. Like, you will get some bangers in there. Inside Out comes out in there. But for the most part, that's what Pixar's doing. Sequel, actual film. Sequel, actual film. A couple variations. But then after Toy Story 4, like, Disney lets up and says, okay, we're going to let you guys do your own thing. And that's when they make Onward, Soul, Luca, and Turning Red. And all of those are, like, fine, but they're really high concept, and people can't really get into them. Following that, you jump into Lightyear, which was a big miss, and now we're doing Elemental. It seems really obvious that they're heading right back into sequel territory, most especially because of Bob Iger's announcement in February that Pixar is doing Toy Story 5. Like, they're gonna pull the reins back and go, nope, you had your chance to do creative stuff. We gave you 5 movies in a row, and none of them popped. And part of that's the freaking pandemic, and part of that's Disney putting it on Disney Plus and Bob Chapek's decisions. Like, I totally get that, but like also, they're high concept movies. Soul is not for everybody, right? Luca is not for everybody. I don't know, so that's where I think they're going.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of time before we're getting live action Toy Story, live action Incredibles. It's not looking good, and I hate to see things going into sequelitis. Toy Story 5, like, please just let these characters rest. Like, I guarantee you, there's thousands upon thousands of creative authors out there that have an incredible story. If you would just interview someone and not just do Toy Story again, which is a shame because the first 3 Toy Stories it's a perfect trilogy, and now they're just adding more.
Pixar's next 2 films coming out in 2024, at least currently scheduled to, are Elio, an exciting story of a young prince who travels the galaxy and has to save the universe, and Inside Out 2, and that's Pixar.
Are you
think
joking? Inside Out 2?
I'm not kidding.
Oh,
that's a real thing. That's coming out June next year. At least currently, that's what that's scheduled for. Yeah, like, yes, like they're just doing the sequel thing again. Like, that's where we're headed. It's a bummer. Like, it's not a good thing, you know. And I think like this is functionally Disney's game to lose. I know they've got that new movie Wish coming out, where the animation's like a little different, but like, dude, I just came out of Spider-Verse. Like, if you're
that's
not
in the vein of Frozen.
Yeah, if you're not throwing up like insane color saturation and like wild layer effects, like, I don't know if it's gonna do it for me anymore, right? Like, it feels like it's the next step in animation, and Disney is lagging far behind. And it's like, you guys have got to get it together. Like, they need to call up their head of animation and have a serious conversation about the future of the company. Because, like, I know animation doesn't hold them up anymore, but by God, it's what sells tickets to parks. Like, you guys better get it together, you know? This is a big deal.
Again, that's part of what I mean by, exporting culture, is that you want to not just make a good movie, but a movie that is like a part of a child's life that they will remember, and they say, I want to go to Disney and see The Little Mermaid because that was the first movie I went to. And that's the kind of thing you're missing out when you're just doing a bunch of sequels that no one remembers and are kind of babysitting tools.
Yeah, it's such a mess, dude. I hope Disney gets it together. I think there's a lot of talent at that studio. With that, we should probably move into our final film of the episode. Andy, you got the summary for this?
I sure do.
Please take it away.
Triangle of Sadness. So this film was the last year's Palme d'Or winner at Cannes and was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, and also Best Screenplay. It's kind of surprising for those, because this is a foreign film. Ruben Ostlund has previously done Force Majeure. It was a Swedish film. The Square also. And he kind of has this style of social satire, very dry kind of humor. Force Majeure is a classic. They made a terrible American comedy version of it that's not very good. But anyways, Triangle of Sadness is about a kind of group of people who go out on this luxury cruise. And they're incredibly wealthy, and we get to meet both the very wealthy and then the people working on the boat. This sounds like a lot of reality TV has this exact same premise. But we kind of meet our main-ish characters early on in Harris Dickinson and Charles B. Dean, who are up-and-coming models, trying to become a part of the wealthy and elite. They are not in that circle, but they kind of look like they have this big argument kind of about money in the first act before we end up on the boat. We meet a number of different personalities, a lot of old wealthy people who are completely out of touch with just regular people and who ask for ridiculous things and have ridiculous expectations, and are kind of also the causes of their own problem. The trailer gives a lot away, but eventually there's a big storm. Everything kind of goes wrong, and the ship kind of, people are eventually stranded on an island. That's our overarching plot, but it's more about like the characters and relationships and kind of day-to-day awkward circumstances between the very wealthy and just normal people. So Zach, what'd you think?
I like this movie. I don't love it, unfortunately. I this seemed to come out like right next to a few features that were kind of like spearing the ultra rich and ultra elite, like The Menu last year. But we missed it for the show, and now it's on Hulu, which is where we watched it. And while I think it's got some fangs for sure. Like there's some really funny bits they're like really biting. It is like left kind of toothless by like just its beating of a runtime. The pacing in this movie is really poor. It's really poor pacing, and I can't decide why. I still think about it. Like, why is this movie so long for what's there? Because if it was like a tight 95 minutes, I would think so much more of it as like this charming, like bright spot in a sea of other like otherwise like kind of dull films. Like Triangle of Sadness does a lot really well, but it's so agonizingly slow, and I don't think it helps the movie. I think it kind of hurts it.
It almost feels like a series to me. Act 1 is about 25 minutes long and is just our two fashion leads who are arguing about money and kind of gender roles, and then we get to the boat for Act 2, and that's an entire hour, and Act 3 is also an entire hour, and it's almost like you could just start on the boat. You could cut down that argument and have them, or just have Acts 2 and 3 be shorter. But it feels like I said, it feels like a series. Add another episode or two and call this a limited series. But it's, like you said, it's agonizingly slow. There are some funny parts. Ruben Ostlund has very kind of dry humor, and a lot of his humor is about awkward and uncomfortable conversations that people end up having. But it's also this critique of the wealthy is like kind of a, well, duh. That's like saying that an arms dealer is a bad guy, and it's like, well, yeah, of course, wealthy people are completely out of touch and are, not great people a lot of times. They're not. He's not really telling us anything we don't already know.
Yeah, it walks this fine line between wealth and beauty, and it questions is beauty inherently, does that inherently derive wealth, or is it all a wash? Like, can you derive wealth from the ugly, like the uninspired, like the disgusting even? And this has worked most effectively through its presentation of characters, namely Carl and Yaya are two kind of like fashion model leads who are in a relationship. And these characters on the boat, one of them, namely Russian fertilizer dealer, is that his thing, or is he like an arms dealer? And that was just a gag? I could never.
No, he's he's a fertilizer.
Yeah,
dealer.
and he says he sells fertilizer. He states it very openly, and this man like looks like the crypt keeper and looks disgusting and is like greasy, and like his girlfriend is gross, and it brings into question like what does it mean to like be beautiful, and it is that of any value at all, or is that just derived by society? Do people think that we should give money to beautiful people because they're beautiful, or what? This works out most effectively in the presentation of the cruise ship. I think that's its strongest act. That's kind of section 2, when we have our serving class, a bunch of like very energetic, like very very bright poppy young waiters and waitresses that are helping out, deckhands and stuff that are helping around the boat, who are never going to say no to anything, and the people on the boat who are just like vapid and narcissistic and completely in their own worlds, and couldn't care less, right? And most of the serving staff are very attractive people, and half the wealthy people are like ugly as sin, and are terrible people and talk about awful things and treat each other terribly. And it's a clever commentary, I think, and it gets. I think it's best when it's visual, like the big wreck and the storm that turns into like the ship getting washed up on land. It's a whole thing.
I think I enjoyed the third act better when they there's kind of, they get shipwrecked and like half the people end up on this island, and it turns into a little bit of Lord of the Flies situation where all of a sudden the people with wealth are useless and also have nothing to offer, because you have some of the kind of deckhands who actually know how to like start fires and catch fish and these sort of things, and all of a sudden the power dynamics dramatically shift because of the what is actually useful in this situation. And to me that was a very interesting, more interesting part of the movie. It still drags in that as well. It's just so undisciplined. I'm like I said, I'm surprised it's got a Best Picture nomination.
Yeah, like it reminded me cinematography wise of David Fincher, because David Fincher shoots everything on a tripod and is infamously thought of like a just shut up and shoot it kind of director. Like he's complicated, but like he just locks the camera on a tripod and he sets up the scene and then shoot it and then all right, move the camera on tripod, next scene, like really simple. And this is the same way. Camera's always locked down, very solid, like very very set, but it just doesn't go anywhere. Like it's just a little too slow. Some of those cruise ship scenes are like agonizingly long, and the fight that Carl and Yaya having in Act 1 is like really vain and you don't really care. It does have some funny moments, namely with Harris Dickinson in an elevator, but I agree. I think Andy's right. The meat of it's in Act 3. That's where the real lesson comes from, when power dynamics shift and suddenly the people who are on the boat, like who are the wait staff and the deckhands, now have skills on the island for survival, and the wealthy people have nothing to offer, and suddenly things change. But I like this through line that it's got of that things will never change, like in this fear that like this is how things will always be, when one of our characters is played delightfully by what is her name? Dolly De Leon in Act 3, who's great in this movie. I've never seen her in anything else. I hope she does more stuff I see. She's great in this movie. She is what is she? A maid? She was a custodian basically on the boat, and now on the island has skills and has decided, well, I'm going to be the leader here and tell everybody what to do. And the wealthy people are like, well, that's not fair. And she's like, okay, what are you going to do now? Huh? We're going to go out in the woods and die. And as soon as like that is challenged in any way, everybody immediately writes her off as useless again, despite the fact that she would be ultimately like the thing that would save them. Like it's funny and it's sharp. It's dulled by the time to get there. Like just a lot of time between activity, where I think you're supposed to just kind of like sit in your seat and think thoughtfully about what you're seeing, but like watching it at home like makes it tough to not just like get your phone out, right, and see if somebody texted you or go change your laundry.
I had to take a break for about a half hour and do something else because I just didn't have like the mental focus to kind of get through it. It was just great. And it's one of those movies, it is very fun to discuss once you've seen it, because there are a lot of interesting concepts and things that happen, but it was such a chore. I mean, it's 2.5 hours. It is so long and so slowly paced. I wanted to talk about, so Force Majeure was kind of the movie that put Ruben Ostlund on the map. And part of what's fascinating in that film, the premise is a father kind of abandons his family when a catastrophe is imminent. The catastrophe doesn't happen, and all of a sudden he looks really bad for having kind of abandoned, just briefly, like run from this big thing that was about to happen. And the conversation keeps coming up again. Like his wife keeps bringing it up to every new people they meet because they're on this at this resort. But it's very interesting look at like family dynamics and gender roles, and has some really interesting things to say and look at. And that's kind of what I feel we're missing here. Like we're not being told anything we don't know about wealth and power.
A little bit, and unfortunately, it's not told in like a way that I think is accessible enough for most people. Like I think this would alienate more people than it would appeal to, but in that way I should say it's niche. And if you're into this niche, if you're into this like recent run of like jabs at the wealthy and elite via like Tar or The Menu, like I don't think it's a bad time. Just maybe watch it in bits. Like I think Ruben Ostlund might be better with the series next. Like give him 3 episodes of something or 6 on some streamer and like let him run a little bit. Like I think he would play with the runtime more, because this one's just like, it's a really specific choice. I just don't understand it. Like it just kind of ends up being really offbeat.
Well, and I wonder if maybe just the subject matter is the reason it was winning all these awards and getting nominated, because I mean it was just such a drag. Like it won Palme d'Or, it was nominated for Best Picture and Best Director, and I was like, man, really, this has been a struggle. Like, I'd rather go watch Tar again.
Yeah, Tar also super long, but very fun. Obviously, rooted by Cate Blanchett. I thought this movie was good. Also, real quick, we should mention Woody Harrelson is, for me, a bright spot in this movie, but he's not in enough of it. He's not in enough of this movie to really stand out. But they put him on every piece of advertising they could. So, good for them. Hey, like he's a great get.
I'm really not sure why his character is in this movie at all. He's not in it very much. He doesn't really have an impact.
I feel like he must have just been friends with some, I don't know, somebody, Ruben Ostlund or somebody knows him.
Maybe they just needed to attach a big name.
Maybe. Andy, would you recommend Triangle of Sadness?
Oof. Only to the most diehard cinephile wanting to look at this movie. That there was a lot of buzz last year at Cannes and also at the Oscars. And I think he is a talented director. He just needed someone to rein him in. There's a lot of interesting ideas. Like I said, it's more fun to discuss after you've seen it than it is to sit through it. Watch it in parts if you're interested, but probably not for everyone.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, I think. Like I said, it's niche. Like, if you're into this kind of cinema, like, I think you'll have a good time. But I think even you would admit, like, it getting out of it, like, it is a little slow, man. Like, it just takes a while to get to where it's headed. But it's full in that way. Like, there are a lot of good gags in there, like, lots of really funny, subtle stuff, whether that be, like, really slapsticky or more, like, thoughtful and pulled back. Like, I like Triangle of Sadness fine. I'll go see what Ruben Ostlund does next. Like I think it's my first outing with him as a director. Like, not bad, I would say, but just it's tough to get through. Also, content warning. The second act turns pretty disgusting. With that, we should talk about what we're doing next week. Andy, what are we doing next week?
Well, I'm doing some traveling, so we're actually going to be on break. But we're going to come back with Transformers: Rise of the Beast, which comes out this Friday in theaters only. And also The Flash, the long-awaited Ezra Miller vehicle. That's in theaters June 16th, so we'll be coming back with those two following week. And also just an FYI release, Elemental releases also on June 16th, same day as The Flash, also straight to theater. So there's enough for the whole family. We said this a while ago that like June was going to be absolutely packed with big films.
Yeah, and packed it is. Yeah, excited for all of these. Not so excited about Transformers. Andy's more hyped than I am. I'm not sure why. I feel fine about Flash, and I'm not really excited about Elemental either, but I think I'll end up going and seeing it. So if I do, we'll do a mini review. Or I don't know, we'll save it for the next week. We'll figure it out. Either way, if you enjoyed the show today, if you like what we're talking about here, if you liked our reviews, hot takes. Best way you can get in contact with us is to email us. Mail at offscriptfilmreview.com. It's direct. Comes right to us. You can also leave a comment on the Facebook video, or you might be watching this on our Facebook page where we live stream the show every Tuesday. You might be commenting on YouTube where we post our content. A lot of cool things going on YouTube. A lot of cool things happening on YouTube. You should go check us out over there. We're also on Twitter, on Instagram. You can find our website, offscriptfilmreview.com, and you can leave us correspondence anywhere you like. The best way to help your boys here at Offscript is just subscribe to the show to get new episodes delivered straight to your phone every single Tuesday, except for next week because we're off. You know, it happens. And, leave a rating and review while you're at it. Let people know what you think. Helps us out a ton and might even make you feel a little good inside. And really, that's what this show is all about. That and movies. So, thanks for listening to Offscript, the home of bold cinema. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for listening.